Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the outskirts of Modena here in northern Italy. And we're at the home of the Energica motor company. They're the first Italian manufacturer of high-performance electric bikes. They're also currently the sole supplier to the MotoE World Championship. That's the support series to MotoGP. They have 3 road-going production models in their range. They're sold globally and they've been in the game for over 10 years now. So who better to ask the question, how do you build an electric bike? Well, joining me now is Gianpiero Testoni, who is the Energica's Chief Technical Officer. Gianpiero, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about the history of the business, first of all, because you're still fairly new, aren't you?
Yes, let's say that we started in 2010 with the first electric motorcycles. In the past, we were also dealing with racing petrol bikes till 2009. But then in 2010, we were asked to join a newborn championship that was the TTX GP. Was really a novelty. In 2009, there was just been the TTX 0 in the Isle of Man. And so from 2010, they decided to open this championship on track. And so we were first, let's say, somehow scared about that, but then we said, why not? It was a period of crisis in that day, so for the companies of the group that were dealing with CNC machining, rapid prototyping, mostly with power sports and everything else, so decided why not doing a product, and that's why we started looking at electric. We enjoy doing the first prototypes. We went racing in 2010, just putting a small step inside the track, and we started winning all the races. so we realized that maybe what we did in a few months, because it was honestly 4 to 5 months development, we designed the whole motorcycle, we designed the battery pack, we bought, of course, motor and controller and everything else, but we put it together in a very short time, and we won the championship. So from there we started to look at a road legal bike. In 2011 we did a mock-up for the EICMA show in Milan. It was very well welcomed from the public. So from there onwards we decided, why don't we start looking at a real high-performing road legal electric motorcycle. And that's when in 2012, it took almost 8-9 months to build the first running prototype. Then we invited all the journalists. We had a tour of the bike, road testing and everything else. It was very, very positive. And so we decided to invest in the product, start the industrialization phase. And that's where we arrived in 2014, when we finished all the industrialization phase. We started selling the first Ego, so the sport bike. Then 2015-16, we started with other 2 models based on the same platform. So let's say this is a very short, compressed history of what we have done from the beginning.
You've come a very long way in a short time, haven't you? You've still got these 3 production models, and they have, over the last, 5-6 years, kept the same names, but the motor and the battery technology has evolved. How do you get to a stage where you think, okay, we now need something that's lighter, faster, stronger, more durable? Or what are the processes?
Let's say that when we started the project, it was very early stage in the electric community. So even having availability of good lithium-ion batteries was very hard. In the meantime, we started growing a name, a brand, and people started knowing us. So we had more availability to different components. We did more homework. We searched for new suppliers. And during the last 5-6 years, as you said, we did a big step. We started with a full development in-house of all the electronics of the motorcycle, something like 10 to 15 firmware updates per year, so rolling. Traction control, cruise control, all things that we added in the years. But the big steps, as you mentioned, were the first one was the battery pack. So we increased from 11.7 kilowatt hour to 18.9, so something like 50% more in less space, less weight, and so it was a big step. This was a very important step, first of all, for the range of the motorcycle. So people always ask more. So they always want to have, if you give them 100, they want to do 150. If they give them 150, they want 200, and so on. So we reached a level where now we have a very good range, depending on the use, of course. And the second big step was motor and inverter. So in the last 2 years, we did a partnership with Mavel, an Italian company that is very specialized in high-performing electric motors and controllers. And we co-designed a motor called EMCE with its own inverter that replaced one-to-one the previous motor, gaining a saving in weight of approximately 15 kilograms, so a big bunch of kilograms, and having the same performance, but even a much better efficiency. So the technology has changed from internal permanent magnet to switching reluctance assisted by permanent magnets. Let's say it's a technology that now all the automotive industry is going because of less magnets, so less cost, safer technology, because if you have some issues in the control with internal permanent magnet, in case of a short circuit, it will lock the wheel, while with this one it will freewheel, so it's also a safety feature. And compactness, so we have decreased the dimension, the weight, and most of all the inertia of the rotor. So it's a smaller diameter, so when entering the corners or when braking, you have a much more agile motorcycle.
Because you have different settings, don't you, for your, in inverted commas, engine braking or motor braking. And does that then regenerate some of the power?
Absolutely,
and
yes.
you can, with your electronics, you can set the different...
This was something we decided from the very beginning. Most of the electric EV industry tries to give you 1 or 2 maps that changes both the riding mode and the regenerative mode. We decided to keep this not together, so having 4 riding modes and 4 regen modes. So this gives you a very huge variety of how you want to ride it. And on the regenerative side, you can, with the high level, of course, you can, the motor acts as a generator, so the energy will flow back inside the battery. Of course, we have a limit compared to 4 wheels, that the traction is only on 1 wheel, on the rear wheel, so you cannot have such a huge engine braking, because otherwise you will reach a locking of the rear wheel. We also did a patent on this system to avoid the locking of the rear wheel during the regenerative phase. So on this side, let's say that we did a very fine-tuning of everything that is possible for, first of all, for the best riding experience, and secondly, for the efficiency. Of course, we cannot think of huge amount of energy recovery during the regenerative phase, but every small makes makes a difference.
I rode the Ribelli RS at the back end of last year, and it was it's phenomenal, really, how it works. You set it in one, and I think the brake comes on automatically, doesn't it, as you roll off the throttle, just as a safety feature?
Yeah, you mean the rear brake light? Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So when you're looking at developing motor and battery technology, does that then surely automatically makes you think, well, we need to make the bike a little bit more compact? Do we need to change the ergonomics, the seat, the frame, the electronics? Does one thing lead to another, or are you going to get to a stage where you're kind of redesigning the whole package?
Both steps. So one is, of course, we did a huge investment in testing and developing the system we have now. We call it platform. That is mainly a frame, swing arm, all the structure of the vehicle. So we try to adapt. The first step is to adapt. The second step is do small modifications. When we reach a point where we need a huge modification, it's worth to do a complete new platform, because otherwise it will be a patch modifying, and then it's not worth, because then sometimes it's good to draw a line and do a complete new chapter. So that's what we feel is happening.
So currently the 3 production models you have available globally, they all use the same frame, battery, swing arm, motor, don't they? They all have the same components.
Yeah, different electronics, of course, different settings, different ergonomics, different plastics, but let's say that the core, it's in common.
And they're very much aimed at the premium end of the market, aren't they?
We want to remain in the premium segment, so a niche segment, because the EV market is quite small right now. The motorcycle EV market is smaller because people that can ride a bike can afford even an electric bike. That is something that is little more expensive than the top models of the petrol bikes. But it's, let's say, the community that is able to ride a performing motorcycle that has the right age for driving it. It's much more restricted compared to the 4 wheels. So we really want to keep this niche, and it's where we are good at. We are not good, Italians normally are not really good at doing huge numbers. For the other markets and other, let's say, countries good at doing huge numbers. We want to work on the feeling, on the emotions, on giving a product that is really something that a customer is proud of, that goes wherever he goes, everyone stops staring at the bike, giving the wow effect, we call it. So that is what we are looking at.
I remember you spoken in the past, I think in fact I quoted you, talking about the roar of a motor, as opposed to, for those people who don't necessarily believe in electric as the future, one of their arguments is about obviously range, but also noise and how pedestrians might feel about it. But of course with the Energica, I'm lucky enough to have ridden one, so I know how it sounds. How do you go about creating this, as you call it, the roar?
We did this because almost all motorcyclists, we know that you need some sound when riding. So as I said previously, it's an emotion bike, so you need to be involved in the riding. People say you don't have clutch, you don't have noise, you don't have gear shifts. We think that all these things are positive, but still we need some sound. So we worked on straight cut gears, so a gear reduction. We don't have shifting gears, but we just have a gear reduction. And with straight cut gears, we give this sound to the motorcycle that is something like Star Wars, something futuristic that gives this feeling that can be heard by pedestrians. Of course, if you go at very low speed, you won't make any noise, but at that point you still have possibility to brake. If you go at higher speed, then people even feel it's a different sound, so you catch even more attention, because people are used to engine sound, but are not really used to this kind of sound, so it even catches your attention more.
You spoke about the beginning of the company, or the groundwork for the company being in racing, and of course it's come full circle because you've spent the last 3 seasons, now in season 4 for 2022, with being the sole manufacturer for the MotoE World Championship, World Cup. Obviously it must have been an extremely proud moment for you and the company to be involved in that kind of level of sport. What have you learned from it? What have you taken from it that has kind of translated across into the production bikes?
Several things we learned, because first of all, we have a racing heritage, so we really wanted to go back to racing as soon as there would have been high-level championship. So when Dorna asked us to be part of this, of course, we couldn't say no, because if we want to be the top-end motorcycle and we are not part of the racing, said, okay, it's something we have to do. Then I believe that if we wouldn't have started racing, maybe nobody would have had the courage to start it. So we really were proud of what we have done. We really were brave also for what we have done. And what we have learned mainly is that racing, of course, is completely different from road legal bikes. On some side, it's easier because it's a closed environment, everything is controlled, riders are professional riders. So on that side, we feel that doing a road legal bike is more difficult. So all the homologations, thinking that even the most strange thing can be done with a motorcycle, on a racing track is something that normally doesn't happen. But at the same time, the development, the speed, the timing you have is something that you cannot move. So if the race is on Sunday, you cannot say, sorry, I'm late, let's do it on Monday. No, you have to be ready for that race, for that date. We have always been used to doing racing, so speed in development has always been in our DNA, but you know, high level, international level, sole manufacturer, it's not easy. So we said it's like an all-in, or it goes very, very well, or it goes very, very bad. So we think that it has been a very challenging thing to do, but a very nice thing we have done. We learned a lot of lessons. We have developed a lot of things. For example, the battery we have now derives directly from the technology MotoE. We did the first season. We tested so much during the racing environment that is even much more stressful than what is the road environment. And this gave us the possibility to speed up the development. And so the industrialization phase was shortened because most of the validation was derived from the track experience. We came with the new motor first on the road bikes, and this year we brought it in MotoE. So this is quite a nonsense because normally you develop the new things in racing and then you bring them on the road bikes.
Giampiero, you're coming to the end of your contract with Dorna and the MotoE World Cup. Does this allow you and the business to concentrate on other segments and more technology and development? What's sort of next on your agenda?
Well, let's say that we are very, very active. So the contract with Dorna doesn't mean we will stop racing. We are evaluating different things we have on the table, but this is something we cannot talk about. But at the same time, yes, we will continue to develop road legal bikes. Not only, we are also developing a new business unit inside the company that is called Energica inside, that is dealing with development of powertrains for electrification of other segments. For example, could be marine segment, air, car, other motorcycles, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, whatever needs to be electrified. We have just put in place this new business unit that will support on the engineering phase and on the production side for everyone that is searching for let's say an electric powertrain going from battery to inverter to motor and all the vehicle control units. So let's say that our projects are huge. We have such our desk is full of different projects. Of course, we have to select some of them. But yes, let's say that we will have new racing, new Energica inside, and new road projects.
It'd be great to see the MotoE bikes or derivative of in the British Superbike Championship, maybe.
Okay.
You talk about the Powertrain and Energica inside as the business unit. Will we eventually see the components sold as a package to other manufacturers?
This is the scope. We have had a partnership with the Lotto on the 48-volt systems. So let's say for the urban mobility that can go from kick scooters, electric scooters, mopeds, small scooters up to 15, 20 kilowatt, 48 volts, so low voltage. And then we will take all the experience we have in high voltage, bringing our powertrains and our VCUs, and giving a service to whoever is needing. So yes, the scope is to have batteries, motors, inverters for other segments. We will be the system developer, but we will not be the OEM. So we will support the OEM to bring the full electrified boat, car, motorcycle, or whatsoever on the road or on the lake, on the sea.
Fascinating future you have lined up. Just going back to an earlier topic of discussion, when you're creating an electric motorcycle, where do you start? If you had a blank sheet of paper, or a blank computer screen nowadays, a blank iPad, and a pen, what's the first thing you think about? Is it the sort of the target market, the price point, the motor?
Let's say that we have the input from the marketing and our sales. So what the market is asking now. So when we started with the Ego was we have to give the wow effect. So it has to be a super sport bike, something that nobody would dare to do. So it was very, very challenging. Right now we have a market, we know a better market. The market is growing, and also the customer is much more ready than how it was maybe 6-7 years ago. So the customer now knows what he really needs. And this is good for us because people start to know what is the technology. So starting from the marketing, let's say adapting it to what is feasible, because sometimes marketing asks something that is beyond the limit. The sales as well. So we try to adapt it to what is really feasible. We do a specification of the whole vehicle that includes pricing, range, let's say price, range and weight, and performance are the 4 master points, milestones that we have to put everyone at the table agreeing on the same points. And after that, we design the battery pack, the powertrain, so motor and inverter. And then based on the kind of vehicle we are willing to do, we design the frame around it. So this is normally the schematics because let's say that what is driving the development is mostly the battery. The battery is developing so fast that it's really like our cell phone. So after 1 year looks old. So the technology here is much closer to consumer electronics rather than to a vehicle. So based on that, we have to be up to speed. Of course, we cannot have a bike that is old after 1 year, but if maybe a life cycle of a normal motorcycle is 5, 7, 8 years, this will be shorter for sure, because the technology is evolving so fast. So now we are in the rapid curve of development. Then we will reach a point when it will be stabilized and it will be flatter, and at that point it will be much closer to what is the technology of petrol motorcycles.
Speaking of petrol and the price of oil currently, you must be in a position right now where you're kind of rubbing your hands thinking, yes, this is our time, for an opportunity for you to really build up momentum and speed with your the company's development.
Yeah, honestly, even with lower price of oil, the momentum is already there, because let's say that the motorcycle market is something driven by the automotive industry. So normally we are 5 years after the automotive market. So if the automotive market now has the trend full electric, it's what we have believed till the beginning, because hybrid, fuel cell, we just put apart all this technology. Full electric is the way to go. This is what we decided in 2011. Fast charging is a must. All our motorcycles have fast charging. It's the only way to make it really usable, because if you have to wait a few hours to have it charged, it's no more riding a motorcycle. It means the only place you can go is the range that your motorcycle has. So let's say that the technology driven in that side is something that is giving the momentum. So we know that now is the right moment to push as much as possible on the accelerator, and that's why also we decided to put in place the Energica Inside business unit, because everyone will go electric now or later. So this is what everyone has to do. In the motorcycle market, it's still something, oh, no, I will never do electric, but then they will have to. They will have to.
We see so many of the manufacturers kind of talking about this, and they have the battery agreements in the Far East, and we have Triumph being very public with what they're developing, Harley Davidson, of course, Yamaha now. In 10 years' time from now, Energica will be a market leader?
Let's say that numbers-wise, no, because we will still remain in a niche market in smaller numbers compared to a BMW, an Honda, or something like that. But of course, we have all the experience they still have to build, or they have to catch up. Because, you know, starting from scratch, when you decide, you can have all the engineers, but the experience is something you have to build with time. You cannot jump that learning curve. It's not possible. You can reduce it, but still the experience is what makes the difference. So we have experienced so many things in the last 10 years, from racing, road, racing again, extreme conditions, extreme things that have happened. And this is something that nobody can buy, just hiring people or getting the best engineers. Still is something, even switching from 4 wheels to 2 wheels, that the requests are completely different. So what is needed on a 4-wheeler is not what we need on a 2-wheeler. So really is something that the experience for us is trying to keep at the highest level. And then, of course, everyone is coming. So we have always to be one step ahead.
Giampiero, thank you so much for your time. It's been a fascinating insight.
Thank you.
Okay, coming up next, we're going to talk to Giacomo Leone, who's the Sales and Marketing Director. Giacomo, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
What was interesting, Giampiero was talking just a little bit earlier on about how the electric motorcycle industry is almost exactly, I don't know about exactly, but about 5 years behind the car side. And we're seeing, well, certainly in the UK, we're seeing a lot more electric vehicles on the roads. Can you kind of expand on why there's that gap and how beneficial it is to an electric motorcycle manufacturer?
100% agree with Giampiero. Cars are really far behind, not only in terms of technical development, but also on the network development and on customer base. We were the first, and we are still the first. No big manufacturers are opening, except Harley Davidson, to electric 2-wheelers. So we still have few years of advantage in comparison to our competitors. Of course, we don't have such a big network at present. We have more or less 85 dealers between Europe and Middle East and Far East, and 15 dealers more or less in US. So we have around 110 dealers worldwide. But they are concentrated above all on the western side of Europe. The most part of them are in Germany. Then we have dealers in Netherlands, Italy, France, Spain, UK is having a great development. And also the Eastern Europe is just starting now, and the Scandinavian countries instead are really increasing their volumes in a fast way, because they are more, let me say, ready to electric, because they were the first ready for 4-wheelers electrical. So they are the most ready for 2-wheelers. The problem, let me say, for the Scandinavian countries is that their season is so short and the market is not so big. But we have higher market share in those countries respect to the big 5, I mean, Italy, UK, Germany, France, and Spain.
Globally, where would you say is your biggest, your biggest current market, but also your biggest opportunity?
Yeah, the biggest market at present is US. And among US, California is our big market. And because, okay, they are more ready. They have Tesla, they have a good mentality, especially in California. And of course, it's so big, more than 300 million inhabitants. So it's not difficult to be the first market.
Do you think they like to be a trendsetter as well?
Yeah.
With electric vehicles?
Yes, exactly. In Europe instead, the first market is Germany, and followed by smaller markets like Netherlands and Switzerland. But in the recent years, last year and this year, UK is making a big step ahead, and also France is growing, and Italy and Spain are growing too, and a Scandinavian country, of course. We think, and we are quite sure that Germany and UK will lead the market and the volumes in the next 2 years. Instead, in Far East, we had a good exploit last year in Taiwan. We sold a batch of 40 bikes for the new importers, and for the new importer, we are also having a nice growth in Australia starting this year, and we hope that Japan will follow soon. So we have different approaches in different markets, but all of them have a good mentality, a good infrastructure. Some of them are incentives and purchasing ability. These are the 4 pillars of our success.
From a marketing perspective, again, we spoke a little bit earlier with Gianpiero about the influence that marketing and sales particularly has on new models. So if you were creating a brand new electric motorcycle right here in this building, you would obviously be involved from the beginning. We are. Yeah, it's not difficult to understand which are the segments of the market that have to be approached by us. In Europe, the best seller is the BMW GS, and in the next future, we will follow this path of growing our range into different segments that are, let me say, the ones in which the market of standard bikes is growing. Never forgetting our base, our sporty bikes with an Italian soul, an Italian design, and the wish to be the best in terms of performance, design, and quality of the products. Of course, it's a premium product, isn't it? You price high because of the quality of what you've achieved in terms of its research and development, and also the components that you've used, the processes that you go through here in Italy. Obviously, there's a great deal of passion and soul, as you say, that go into these. Would you ever consider bringing an alternative model to the market that's perhaps a little more achievable for everybody, that would perhaps give you a bit more growth in terms of volume?
Yes, we are thinking to this kind of products, because in that landscape, in which we want to be present in most segments, of course, we are thinking to develop a new platform, always keeping the same soul, the same Italian soul, design, quality of components, quality of manufacturing, and I'm sure that in maximum 2 years we will develop new platform with bikes that will have, let me say, wider
appeal?
Panorama. Yeah, wider appeal and wide panorama of potential customers.
When it comes to the people that aren't as engaged with the potential for the future of motorcycling, obviously particularly with electric motorcycling, how do you kind of combat the negativity? Everybody will talk about, of course, about maybe price, but range and recharging times. But how do you kind of get over those hurdles?
In a bike, it's always more difficult than in a car to find the correct compromise. A car is if it's 2 tons heavy or 2 tons and 200 heavy, it's more or less the same. For us, it's more difficult to find a compromise between the weight, performance, dimensions, and the range. But technology will support us, will help us, and mentality will change. Cars will help us, and are also helping us to think differently, respecting of what we were thinking in the past. Now, for a bike like this, you can have up to 400 kilometers of range in city and 250, 280 on normal roads. So it's enough. And the next step will be possible only with a change of technology inside the batteries. Until we will have this technology, we can play with dimensions of the battery depending on what the bike is made for. If the bike is made for racing, I don't care about long ranges, but I want to have a bike that is light and ready to be used on nicest road and so on. Instead, for a touring bike, for example, who cares about the weight and who cares about the dimensions? I care more about the range. So future will bring us news, but let me say, we will differentiate the bikes depending on the use of that.
Of course, Energica is only, 10, 12 years old, but you imagine back when Harley Davidson or Yamaha were 10 or 12 years old, the potential they had, or as far as they came, is almost mind-blowing. I assume that the amount of electric cars on the road is just kind of shooting through the roof now over the last maybe 2 or 3 years. Certainly in the UK, we're seeing something like every other car has got the little green sticker on the registration plate. Awareness must help you.
Of course.
In 5 years' time, we talk about the 5-year gap. So in 5 years' time, we would all hope, perhaps, the believers in the electric motorcycling, that there will be so many more on the roads.
Yeah, but cars are really helping us. Helping in terms of mentality, but also the infrastructure. We are not so big, the bike market is not so big to influence so much government to invest money on infrastructure. Cars are helping us, and the fact that cars are ahead of 5 years ahead of us is really useful.
It's like slipstreaming.
Yeah, yeah, we are just following, and we will foresee what happened in the cars in the last 5 years. Tesla was unique 5-6 years ago. Just Renault and Nissan were following the path of electrification. But after 5 years, every big brand has not one model, but a small range of vehicles that are electric or electrified. We foresee the same in the future also for two-wheelers market. And this will help us more to, to spread this electric wave into the public.
People talk about the opportunities for alternative power. So once the internal combustion engine goes or phases out, obviously electric is here already, but have you ever given any consideration to alternative power?
Yeah, not at present. For cars, maybe it's a little easier because the compromise is easier to find. For bikes, we do not foresee nothing except electric vehicles with battery, engine, but with technology that will grow faster than now. So we think that really in 5 years, 10 years, we will have technology completely different from the one that we have now. Of course, cars will be ahead and we will follow, but we don't see anything except electricity, and we will follow this path for sure.
And from you're coming to the end of your contract with Dorna for the MotoE support. How, as a brand, as a marketing exercise, how has that helped? It can't have been a cheap exercise in the first place, but clearly Energica is now, a brand that's very well recognised in the world of motorcycling.
Yeah, it helped us a lot in indirect way, let me say, not directly. We didn't have the success in terms of visibility that we hoped we could have. But in an indirect way, every customer knows that bike is reliable, because if they play in MotoE, if Dorna choose Energica, such a small company with so few people, and choose this company that had a great success in terms of reliability of the bikes in a racing way, so stressing the bike for a few days, but really trying to have the 110% of the possibility of the bike. So even the bikes that we go on serial production will have the same reliability. So it supported us a lot. But we think that we will exit, when we will exit the MotoE, we will keep mentality on our potential customer. They were the first in MotoE, so bikes were reliable, that can be reliable even now. So it was really useful, it is useful, and it will be useful even in the future.
Jacopo, thank you so much for your insight. It's been fascinating talking to you.
Thanks to you.
So we've had some interesting conversations there, and Energica seemed to be right on the pulse really with what's happening. It's interesting to see how electric motorcycling, electrification on two wheels is about 5 years behind the car industry, and it's quite easy to see. It's for the last couple of years we've seen a real influx of Teslas and Nissans and Peugeots, and the manufacturers who are really embracing the electric world. And equally, every other week, certainly on BikeSocial, we're talking about batteries swapping or agreements being made with the Japanese manufacturers or a new Harley Davidson electric this, or Yamaha electric that, or of course Triumph have got their TE1 project really gathering a lot of momentum and pace this year. Energica are talking about expanding, so they're clearly putting some money into it. The world will eventually be a quieter and less polluted place by doing away with the internal combustion engine, and I think it's good to see the motorcycling world is embracing it. It'll take a long time, possibly a generation or two. It mightn't be that long before we are truly into it. But fascinating insight nonetheless from Energica. Great to ride their models, great to hear a bit more about those bikes and the sort of the passion that they have and the industry that they have here, and the sort of the way in which it's gathering momentum globally. I'm sure there's plenty of questions and comments and thoughts. Don't be afraid to leave them below. We'll answer as many as we can. So thanks for watching. Hope you've got something out of it, and I'll see you next time. Should I pretend like I'm talking?
Action.
Oh, you were recording?
It was, yeah.
Of Energica's motor... Start again. But you're not recording. We probably are. This is like the outtakes.
Perfect.